You have this book. It's called With Intention. And so, what does with intention mean?
Means a lot. It's very personal to me. So just in the surface, with intention means this proactive way of living. So if you think about it, that the paradox is I think a lot of people get stuck in reactive mode. So for me, with intention is being very proactive and advancing. So it's this combination of self-intention, so building yourself, but the goal is so you can serve others. It's not a selfish thing. You're just building yourself for yourself. So it's this idea of advancing, continuous improvement, be the best version of yourself so that you can serve others and build them up.
Okay, so in your book With Intention, you have this thing called the intention wheel. You have 5 parts: awareness, agency, ambition, action, adjustment. And I kind of want to focus in on 2 parts of that, which are kind of called the connectors of it almost, agency and action. I think this is something that specifically Gen Z and my age group in college right now, knowing agency, how can you control? I have a quote that I want to cover. So it's, you can only control the smaller circle. The rest is just noise. Focus on what you can influence and you can grow this over time. So this is from a coach of yours. What does this quote mean for agency?
Yeah, so first of all, I'll give you the context of that. I was complaining about something. There was a situation at work. We had lost a deal and I had an executive coach I was working with and I was complaining. He said, "John, hold on a second. Draw big circle and then draw a smaller circle inside and then color it in." I said, "You're too focused on what you can't control. Did you do the best job you could to try to win the deal? Because that's all you can control. And if you did that and you can look yourself in the mirror, then you're fine. You're not going to win every deal." And it was a really good epiphany for me to understand. I've heard that before, right? It's not rocket science, but it's this idea of taking ownership and just really looking at everything and say, I heard this recently actually on a different podcast that talked about everything is just information. So everything that happens to us, whether it's good or bad, is information. And we have the choice to then do something with it. So in that situation, it's all right, it's maybe some negative information, but how do you use that for fuel to get better and grow to the next time?
Okay. So what would you say, like, whenever people are struggling with things that they like maybe complaining about or struggling, what can they do to take control?
Yeah, first off, you have to do the work to understand yourself and get really, I think, introspective. So whether it's writing, I think just making the conscious choice. So you've got to be very aware of how you react and how you're feeling. And then it's literally like something you can practice as you go. So there's a great company I'm good friends with, some of the guys there. They have a thing called the R factor. It's E plus R equals O. Event plus response equals outcome. So events happen to us and we want outcomes, but the only thing within our control is the R. It's called the R factor. So that's what you have to focus on. And they have a beautiful description of this. It's literally, you can either respond above the line or below the line. So responding below the line is kind of the default response, where it's very, you get something doesn't go your way, you start blaming, complaining, defending, keep making excuses. That's not good, right? It's very easy to do as human beings. Above the line, they talk about pressing pause and really trying to be intentional about making the right decisions. And again, using whatever that negative situation is for good. And for me, that I've actually used that. I've had a piece of paper where I'm like, okay, E plus R equals O. Here's the event that happened. What's my response? Well, my below the line response would be to complain. My above the line response would be to, I'm going to learn from this and grow from this.
Okay. So you got agency there, that connects awareness to ambition. Then after that, ambition to adjustment is action. So it says, doing great work isn't always a clean process. It's gritty, difficult, and messy. And that came from the context of you working with another author. So what can you do to take action and to deal with whenever you're doing work? It might not always seem like you're being productive, or something we could talk about later. You talk about being effective versus productive.
Yeah.
How can people, specifically college students, work on action?
Yeah. So this is something I did not know when I was in college, and I was a college soccer player. I wish I knew this. I got pretty good. I was good enough to earn a scholarship. However, I didn't understand the process, how important the process was. Even though I'd go to practice, I had a soccer goal in my backyard, and I was in the process. But it wasn't until later on in life that I had some sales failure and some failures in the public speaking world that I realized that the process is what matters, not the outcome. So you can control the labor you put in and the work you put in, but you can't control the fruit, what happens. So that's all. And that's a huge mindset change, because when you know, like if I wrote a book, so I knew from studying other writers, yeah, I want to finish the book. That's great. That's a really good vision to have. But I had to commit to the process every day, or however many words a week or whatever that was. And over the course of time, it's like compound interest that starts to grow. So I think for you said for college students, whatever it is that the goal, you got to have ambition, you got to have goals, right? But I think too many people just set the goal and they don't realize it's the process that gets you there. It's brick by brick by brick by brick, and just showing up day after day and continuing. It's incredible what happens over the course of time when James Clear talks about, you get 1% better every day. I think it's like you're 37x by the end of the year if you're 1% better every day. I think it's a pretty cool way to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so with this, you also talk about the START formula that you have, or the STAR starter.
Yep.
In your book. So what exactly the STAR formula is? Stimulus, thought, action, result. How does this apply to the 5-step process that you have within the
manual? Yeah. So think about stimuli. So if I'm at home and I have a cup of water here, if this is a beer, for example, like if I have beer in my fridge that's front and center, and I walk by it every day, that's a stimulus that's coming in, and I'm probably more apt to drink that beer. So the good choice would be to put a lot of water front and center, that sort of thing. So what happens is we have stimuli all around us every day, whatever that is. We call it TV, you call social media, right? That's a big thing. So if you have your notifications turned on your phone and it keeps beeping, what's going to happen? Right? You're going to look down on it. So I tell everyone, turn off your notifications. You should never have your email notifications on. I mean, it's crazy to see people with Apple Watches that are constantly checking. So what happens is the stimulus happens, and then we typically have subconscious thoughts and emotions. They're kind of below the surface, and then we act. So the action produces a result. So I think we should actually flip it. And I think what I've learned, at least, is that actually taking the action, despite even when the stimulus comes, you still take action. So for example, I don't know, it's Monday morning and I haven't worked out yet, but I know I want to get my workout in, but I also know I've got a bunch of calls to make. There's this constant struggle. I mean, it's probably not the best example. Let's say there's a great TV show on that you want to watch, right? You want to binge watch something on Netflix, but you should probably go work out, right? It's like delayed gratification. So just because that stimulus happens to you, you have a choice to make still. And that drives everything. So I think too many people let their emotions and their thoughts drive. I've also heard this before stated that you should motion over emotion. Right? And so get in motion. We talked a little bit at dinner about writing my book, or you talked about your process of rehearsing. Me, same way. Like I like to walk and rehearse. I don't like to sit in a room or even stand. I actually like to walk. Something about getting in motion. I mean, I'm sure you're a soccer player, right? So it's amazing to me when I don't want to work out, if I can just get 5 or 10 minutes in and break a sweat, right? You feel incredible. Like the days you want to play soccer, you just warm up, you're juggling, you're passing the ball, like all of a sudden you're in the flow state, you're ready to go. So that's really the concept. Like, how do you drive towards action rather than letting your emotions and thoughts dictate it?
Okay, yeah, I definitely feel that, because obviously practicing almost every day. It was soccer. Some days you show up, you're like, don't really want to play. It's not really what I'm feeling today. But then you're warming up with the guys and you're just feeling like, okay, I think I could do this. We get in practice, and then boom, an hour and a half later it ends.
Yeah.
So I think it's the same with studying. You're trying to write an essay, maybe just write the intro, or maybe just write that first thesis sentence, and then all of a sudden you're writing a couple hundred words. I guess starting, I know there's one I've seen, it's called the 3-2-1 method. Even just get it out of bed. Like in the morning at college, the schedule is so wonky. most kids are drowsy when they're getting up in the morning, myself included. So even using your brain and just saying 3, 2, 1, up and you go. Yeah, and that just starts this process similar to what you said.
Yeah.
And you just, okay, I'm getting up now. There's no other thoughts that are in your brain other than those numbers.
Sure.
And it gets you up and it gets you going.
It's great.
And it's helpful because some days you're just like, man, I was up till 2. I don't want to get up at all.
Yeah.
Go to class, but it gets you going.
Cool.
So
you'll tell yourself that 3, 2, 1, and
yes, in your brain, like you don't do like 10, like starting from 10, because then there's enough time where you can think about other things. But it's 3, 2, 1, up, you're going.
Yeah.
And they can just kickstart you, get you moving.
Yeah.
And then the trick is don't lay back down.
You go.
Laying back down is like,
Don't snooze. Don't get snooze.
yeah, don't hit snooze, all that. So
Yeah.
yep.
I love that.
So I want to talk about the thing I mentioned earlier, effective, not productive.
Yeah.
And this idea, you have a bunch of different ideas in the back of your book with intention. What does this idea of effective, not productive mean?
Yeah. Okay. So productive to me is like efficient, which is good in a lot of ways, but effective. You could be productive and get a lot of stuff done, but what if it's very low impact stuff that's not, doesn't mean anything? So I tend to think of it like I categorize, for instance, my to-do list like high impact work, medium impact work, and then keep the lights on work. You still have to keep the lights on. So for me, I've got to do like expense reports at work when I travel. Kind of pain in the butt to do, but it's part of the job. So that goes into that category. Not super, I mean, I got to do it, but I'm in sales, so it's not really bringing in business or serving our customers, is it? Right. So, I think of it as this high impact work is really what drives. It's any time I spend with my team, anytime I spend in front of clients, not behind a desk in meetings. That's like medium or low impact, right? So I could still be productive. I could have a lot of meetings. However, that's not as effective. There's a great book I'll recommend to you for the watchers and listeners. It's called The Effective Executive by Peter Drucker. I don't know if you're familiar with Drucker, but yeah, right. Management consultant. It's really good. It's just, and I'm a big, I love productivity and I don't want to call it even time management because I think it's more energy management. This idea of like energy is replenishable. So for instance, in a book called The Power of Full Engagement, which is a great read, Jim Lair and Toby Schwartz talk about the power of oscillation. So you work in like 90-minute increments and then you take a break. Like the research actually shows, so when you're a student, I know I used to be in college, I pulled all-nighters, all that. Like so even cram and sometimes get stuff done, right? But it's not the most really effective way, especially for the long term. So the science says 90 minutes at a time and then go take a break. Like I'm in the business world. So there's a lot of people that come to me and they're like, man, I'm exhausted. I'm on these virtual calls all day long. That COVID hits and now everybody's virtual for the most part. And it's exhausting. So I always coach people and say, why don't you tell someone, hey, do you mind if I take this meeting as a walking meeting? And I may get off video. Like, okay. I mean, I think video is fine and good, but it should be okay for someone to go take a walk and get off video and then have a conversation. So it's amazing to me how many people don't realize they have the power to do that. And some companies still push for, you got to be on video, whatever. But I don't know, go walk and put yourself on video. I don't care. But just even whether it's taking breaks or finding a way to have movement, I think there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah, I found even like specifically working with my dad, he's on a lot of calls. Yeah, calls. It's the way the company's worked as a virtual company. And having back-to-back Zoom calls, studies have even shown that it just drains you more than anything else. I don't know the exact science behind it. I feel like you get more energy back whenever you're physically talking with people. Sure, there's some connection that fills you up, especially if you're an extrovert or in that realm.
Yeah.
But also, too, just having a phone call where it's just normal phone call. There's no video. You're walking around. You're kind of doing other things a little bit while talking. Because on Zoom, it's just like, logged in, goes through the screen.
Yeah.
I'd say even normal conversations, you're not that focused.
Right.
So it requires you to do so much more for the same thing when you're doing just an in-person talk. So yeah, that allocation of time.
Yeah.
And giving you those breaks. So like the Pomodoro technique.
Yeah, sure.
Some do it like 25 minutes, 5 minutes off. I feel like that might be a little bit too short, but maybe for some things, that's what's required. It's like sharpening the axe. If you have 2 days to cut down before, it's sharpen it for a day.
There you
go. It's the same idea.
Yep.
Having a Sabbath at the beginning of the week, like a Saturday or whatever day of the week, and then going into the week off of rest instead of having a week to rest. like an interesting biblical way to look at it, because like that's how obviously God at the end of his creations, when he did it, the way the weeks were set up, the Sabbath was the first day, the rest of the week followed. So it's cool. It's interesting. It's an interesting way to look at it, because you can reapply it to biblical standard.
Yeah, and prioritizing rest and recovery.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I want to switch gears. You mentioned obviously your soccer experience. What's a little context with that and how it formed where you are now in kind of your identity journey that you've talked about many times?
Yeah. So my identity was in the soccer ball growing up. Loved the game. Still love it to this day. But played collegiately at Bowling Green. Went through some struggles. Had some parents got divorced, and so I just wasn't in the right frame of mind. There was just a lot of things happening, and at that level, when you're not on your A game, as a player, like the competition is hard. It's fierce. So I was very inconsistent. So I'd win a starting job, have a good couple games, and then like I would not be very good, and then I'd be on the bench, and it was just this constant back and forth. And I grew up always being one of the better players on my team and always being a starting player. And the game kind of came easy to me. I loved it. And then it didn't come so easy. Even basics, like I was a left midfielder, so crossing the ball with my left foot, I was having trouble crossing the ball and executing. But what happened was I've used the metaphor of like taking the garbage out. So I had so much stuff stewing up inside me that I wasn't even aware of at the time, that turned into just some heavy stuff. And then you put in the combination of struggling on the field. And I went through some very deep mental health battles, depression, anxiety, unfortunately turned to some alcohol and drug abuse. It was not good. And the backstory, if I could share real quick, is when I was in 5th grade, my dad went away to a mental hospital for 2 weeks. Came home, family never really talked about it. I did not grow up in a very strong faith-driven household, although loved my parents, beautiful, my parents have both passed, but really great childhood. However, we just swept everything under the rug and we didn't talk about it. So all of a sudden I'm starting to have struggles and I didn't know what to do about it. And I was very fearful. I never talked to any of my coaches or teammates, which is crazy to look back. I went and sought some professional help. However, and when I got diagnosed with depression, it was like a death sentence for me, because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the one thing I never wanted. And so, again, identity in a soccer ball, but also an identity in a fleshy, worldly, the outside. I want to always look like have it all together. And I was crumbling inside, and I was definitely afraid of that. So for many years, I just kept everything in, even though I got professional help. And then it eventually turned into I was having panic attacks when I would present. And I actually, in a presentation in Chicago, had a panic attack, had to leave the room. Very embarrassing, fake like I had a headache, but everybody knew something was up. And it was a huge wake-up call for me, because I knew something had to change. I had no faith, like I think I mentioned, and that's what really brought me to God. Like my wife was a devout Christian since she was born, I think. I was very lukewarm, but I was seeking and interested. And so literally through that process, so I have this panic attack. I finally started talking about openly, like, look, I've had struggles, and realized the impact it had on people. Like it just opened up people. I started going to this thing called Toastmasters, which is a speech class, just to build my speaking confidence. So I did that for a couple of years. And then I found Jesus. Like for the first time in my life, I committed my life not until 2015. I was 39 years old, so it took me a while. But I literally had a pastor who said, John, have you made this decision to follow Jesus? And I said, no, what do you mean? No. And he's like, well, you got to draw a line in the sand. Let's get down right here. There's a room like this. We got down and prayed. October 21st, 2015, and my life has changed since then. So I spend every day in the Bible. Now I read the Bible then for the first time front to back. I grew up without a Bible. Again, didn't go to church much, and God forbid you write in it or highlight it, right? Like my Bible now is all written in and highlighted, and it's a mess, and in a beautiful way. So my life changed, and now I get to give back, and I get to help with these sorts of things, speak to audiences, and write the book. It's a huge blessing. And you know what changed for me, if I can share, in 2 Corinthians, Paul's asking Jesus to remove the thorn. And Jesus says, no, my power is made perfect in weakness, right? So when you are weak, then you are strong. And I'm paraphrasing, but that changed for me when I read that. I'm like, oh my gosh, all this stuff I've been through. You talk about agency. How do I use this for good? And so I've just had to reframe it. For many years, it was a battle. And I actually, for many years, hated soccer through this process. And I've realized that was just a moment in time. As I said, it's just information, and it's what I do with it. So I know, kind of long-winded, but I think that's an important piece of the story.
Yeah, and even though it was soccer for you, it's that thing for every person in general, whether it's fashion or things that you're really into. It's whatever idol that you have. It's not necessarily soccer. Soccer can be encompassing, but whatever sport you're playing, whatever activity you're really invested in, that can be the thing that is your identity. And if I'm without this, what am I? And so finding that hole and filling it. Let's just talk about, like Jeff earlier, everyone's in search of that one thing that's all fulfilling.
Sure.
And you believe there's only one thing. And I believe there's only one thing that is all fulfilling. And I've felt that and experienced that throughout my life so far, which is amazing.
I feel that now. Is that? That's really cool.
So I want to ask, like you said, this journey and giving back, serving intentionally. We have the opportunity. You're coming to speak at the entrepreneurship organization here at Cedarville. So you said you've loved hearing and seeing about Cedarville. You've connected with Dr. Carrie Overbunner. What do you like serving intentionally? What's your vision with that? And how do you operate with that? And specifically, why Cedarville? So he's obviously out of Columbus.
Yeah.
Just about an hour away from here. Why did you come out today?
Yeah.
And serving intentionally for your students?
Yeah. So look, this is a blessing to be able to be here as someone who struggled speaking. And by the way, I was a speech champion my freshman year of high school. So speaking was not an issue for me. I think I got a little arrogant with it. Maybe it didn't work too hard at it too. That was part of the story. But I take every chance I can to serve and speak. Like I'll go anywhere at any time, especially to college students. I mean, I view this as me talking to myself 25 years ago. I did not have someone speaking truth into me. Like you guys are in an amazing place. I was just at dinner. I'm blown away. You can feel the love. You can honestly feel Christ on this campus. Like it's really cool. It's not the norm. Now I haven't hung out at a lot of Christian campuses, I'll be honest. Hopefully, Lord willing, I'm going to have a lot more where I go. But there's something special about that. So when you asked, and Dr. Overbrunner's a close friend as well. I'll run through a brick wall for that guy. He's done so much for me. So happy. I view this as an honor, honestly. Talking to you now. It's really, and you're doing great work, man. I love you. For a young guy like yourself to be on a podcast and starting your podcast and running this whole thing is awesome. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I'm excited for you to be speaking to the members. Talking about sales with intention, just a subset of your whole idea of with intention. So where can people find your book? And then I want to mention a conference that you'll be at in a month. So where can people find this book, With Your Passion, USA Today bestseller? Obviously, you're vice president of sales at a really cool SaaS tech company.
Yeah.
So where can people find
it? Yeah, so the book's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. If you just go to those places, Amazon.com. My website is just my name, jongiganti.com. Got a pretty big presence on LinkedIn as well. Happy to connect there. I do quite a bit on X or Twitter. What are we calling it? The Wolf, right? And then I have a newsletter that I publish every Saturday as well. If people want to subscribe to that, that's free and happy to serve that way. And I'd love to connect with anybody.
It's awesome. Yeah. Well, you're speaking at a conference at Cedarville. I'm in about a month from when we're recording this, October 25th and 26th, I believe.
Yep.
It's a Friday, Saturday. What will you be speaking about? And why do you think people, whether you're a professional or a student at Cedarville, why should they go to Impact?
Yeah. So I'm going to be speaking about with intention, but from a building culture perspective. So I lead a sales team. I've obviously played on a lot of sports teams, the family, those sorts of things. So I'm going to put a spin on it that way. I think it's an incredible conference. I've never attended it, but I see the speaker lineup looks amazing. It's going to be here. I take it in the business school. I mean, this building is phenomenal. Oh my gosh. So just to come and see this is really cool. And I think it'd be a great opportunity to serve and network and just bring the love of Jesus to the business world. I think it's important that we have gospel-driven businesses, especially in this day and age. It's a very interesting time in our culture. So I think we have to be bold in our faith and in the corporate world and be okay with that. And I think this is the conference is a great way to build that foundation.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah, for your time, for sharing to the people, just all the experience and knowledge that you've had through your journey in your career. Guys, check him out on his website. Thanks for tuning in. This is the Will Woods Experience.
Thanks, man. So come appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. Amazing.